one of my early memories of Norman, which is very dear to me. Many years ago, it must have been 30 years ago, he shot an episode of Building Sites. Building Sites was this great BBC series in which people were asked to pick their favorite building and to drive, to like take this crew from the BBC around and show the building, just talk about the building. And I remember that Norman had chosen the 747. And I loved it because I've always been a fanatic of airplanes, but in particular, I've always loved the 747. I even proposed it as an acquisition for MoMA, right? So I remember it was just so brilliant because he talked about the 747 as both an architecture and a design object. Like in a way, scale did not matter to him. It was a feat of engineering, of function, of form, of all the different aspects of design that are so important to us and that are really like adamantly strong in the 747. So I remember I was really impressed by it. And the funny thing is, after a few years, I got asked to also do a Building Sites, right? So that's an early and fond memory. And of course, I knew of him because I studied architecture, so he was a monument of architecture at that time already. Definitely, he changed the course of history with an approach that was quintessentially British, in my opinion, because already in the 19th century, Brits have always been able to transform engineering into poetry, right? And in the case of Norman Foster and his architecture, there was always this attention to technology and to engineering that nonetheless did never take over on the overall aspect. But he was able to always stretch the structure and stretch engineering to the goals that he had in mind. So that's how I think about it. Of course, there's a stylistic side to Norman Foster and to his practice that maybe is identified with what used to be called high tech in the 1980s, but it doesn't matter to me. I don't think that it's ever been like that. It's been really about thinking of the synthesis of all the different forces that are part of an architecture that has to work in contemporary times. Norman Foster fits in my perception of architecture because he pushed architecture forward. So I think that once again, I go back to that very simple litmus test that you should use for every piece of architecture, every piece of design, every movie, every piece of art. Does this thing deserve the space that it takes on Earth? You know what I'm saying? It's just like, it's very simple, and it's very subjective too. I would say that the biggest masterpieces are the ones that are objectively everybody can agree upon, right? So it really is, it's fascinating. But this litmus test is important. And if you look at so much of Norman's production, there you go. I don't know the percentage, but quite a lot of it is worth the space that it takes on Earth and the energy that it took to produce. So yeah, that's how I think about it. I was impressed by the Norman Foster Foundation since the beginning. I have to say that I was touched by the kind of projects that it supported that probably would not have found the same kind of support elsewhere. I was really impressed by the determination and the vision of it, and the fact that it continues really contributing to a discourse of architecture, about architecture and about architectural history, and also expands to other forms by bringing in, with architecture as the core, bringing in also design, art, and other social political interests. So it's been really amazing to see the foundation happen. Because I remember when Elena told me, oh, we're going to start a foundation. I was like, oh, nice. It's going to be a foundation, right? Not a foundation. And you look at it now, and it's what, 15 years? And it feels like it's been there for 50 years. I mean, it's a foundation to rival some of the biggest foundations, not because of its endowment. It's not about that. It's just the clarity of the mission It's the projects that it supports that might not have found support elsewhere. It's the mixture of Norman Foster's interests that are the basis of the foundation, but his eclecticism and his curiosity kind of shine through. And it's also Elena, because we know very well that that kind of omnivorous curiosity and interest and passion for the world is also very much her imprimatur. So I am so lucky to have had this seat and have been able to watch it happen. It's really a feat to behold. My favorite building from Foster's career, probably it's Sainsbury. I know that it's an early one, but oh my God, it was so epic already, right? It gave a sense of where Norman was going with this freedom of inventing new typologies of buildings and just pushing the technology so that it could match his vision. So I think that is as moving and as beautiful as it gets, even though I love many other buildings too.